Welcome to another deep dive. You've been looking into the future of food production. How do we feed a growing world without trashing the planet in the process? We've got a stack of articles from earth.org all about sustainable agriculture and some fascinating innovations. Ready to dig in?
Absolutely. It's a complex challenge, no doubt. But there's a lot of exciting work being done. We'll be exploring the downsides of our current industrial farming model, but also the range of potential solutions emerging, from cutting-edge technologies to a renewed focus on traditional practices.
I'm intrigued already. Okay, so let's start with the problem. The Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, reports that a quarter of the world's population is already facing food insecurity. And with the global population projected to hit 10 billion by 2050, that number is only going to grow.
It's a stark reality, and one that demands urgent action. We can't afford to be complacent. This isn't just about producing more food. It's about producing it in a way that's sustainable and equitable.
And speaking of sustainability, I was struck by this quote from George Monbiot's book, Regenerative. He calls farming the world's greatest cause of environmental destruction. When you think about the sheer scale of land dedicated to agriculture, 30 times more than all the cities in the world combined, it's hard to argue with that assessment.
It's a powerful statement, and it underscores the need for a paradigm shift in how we approach food production. We're talking about the impact of fertilizers and pesticides on ecosystems, water depletion, overgrazing, topsoil loss. The list goes on.
So let's talk solutions. One of the articles highlights soilless farming, which sounds like something out of a science fiction movie. I mean, growing food without soil.
It's not science fiction. It's happening right now. One example is vertical farming using hydroponics, essentially growing plants in a nutrient-rich water solution instead of soil. This allows you to stack crops, vertically maximizing space and minimizing land use.
Like Fisher Farms in the UK, which focuses on leafy greens, I was reading that they can produce the equivalent yield of 250 acres of traditional farmland in just 1 acre. That's incredible. And because everything is so controlled, they can grow pesticide-free food year-round regardless of the weather.
Right, and that kind of climate resilience is becoming increasingly important in a world facing more frequent and severe weather events. But it's important to note that vertical farming isn't without its challenges. The initial investment can be significant, and the energy consumption needed to power these systems is a concern.
That makes sense. There are always trade-offs. So are there ways to make vertical farming more sustainable?
Absolutely. There's ongoing research into using renewable energy sources to power these farms and exploring more energy-efficient lighting and climate control systems.
Okay, another company that caught my eye is AppHarvest. They're using hydroponics to grow tomatoes, but what sets them apart is their focus on data and precision monitoring. The results are pretty astounding, 30 times the yield of conventional farms using 90% less water.
It's a testament to the power of data-driven agriculture. By carefully managing inputs like light, nutrients, and CO2, they're able to optimize plant growth and resource use. This level of precision minimizes waste and maximizes efficiency.
What I find particularly exciting about both Fisher Farms and AppHarvest is the potential to return farmland back to nature. If we can produce more food on less land, that frees up land for reforestation, wildlife habitat restoration, and other conservation efforts.
It's a compelling vision, and one that aligns with the growing movement towards regenerative agriculture, which focuses on restoring soil health and biodiversity while producing food.
So shifting gears a bit, what about using insect protein for animal feed? I came across this company called Better Origin that's doing some really innovative work in this area. They're using black soldier fly larvae to turn farm waste into high-protein feed, creating a closed-loop system.
It's a brilliant example of biomimicry, taking inspiration from nature's own recycling systems. And the benefits are impressive. Reduced reliance on traditional feed sources like soy and corn, which are often linked to deforestation, as well as significant reductions in CO2 emissions. They claim their flagship system can save over 130 tons of CO2 each year, which is equivalent to taking 28 cars off the road.
Wow. So we've got these high-tech solutions like vertical farming and insect-based feed, but I'm also curious about the potential for improving traditional farming practices. Can we make conventional farming more sustainable?
Definitely. There's a lot of innovation happening in that space as well. For example, there's a growing movement towards regenerative agriculture, which focuses on rebuilding soil health, increasing biodiversity, and sequestering carbon.
I'm reminded of the story I read about the Napa state in the UK. They were struggling to make a profit with conventional farming, so they decided to try something radical. They rewilded their land. They introduced longhorn cattle to graze the land and essentially let nature take over.
Rewilding is a fascinating approach. It's about restoring natural processes and allowing ecosystems to regenerate. In the case of the Napa State, they've seen a remarkable increase in biodiversity, with rare species returning and thriving.
And the beef from those pasture-fed longhorns is supposed to be amazing. Higher in certain vitamins and antioxidants, and because they're not eating grain, there's no need for feed imports, which reduces their carbon footprint. Plus, healthy soil means more carbon sequestration, so they're actually helping to combat climate change.
It's a great example of how interconnected these issues are: food production, environmental health, and even human health.
Speaking of interconnectedness, I was reading about Patrick Holden, co-founder of the Sustainable Food Trust. He's a big advocate for sustainable farming practices, particularly pasture rotation, and minimizing a farm's environmental impact.
Holden's work is highly influential in the sustainable agriculture movement. He emphasizes the importance of working with natural systems rather than against them.
And he makes this really interesting point about how cows and other ruminant animals actually play a crucial role in healthy ecosystems.
That's right. Ruminants have unique digestive systems that allow them to break down cellulose, a tough plant fiber that humans can't digest. By grazing on grasslands, they help cycle nutrients and maintain healthy soil.
So Holden's argument is that when done right, cattle can actually be beneficial for the environment. That's a far cry from the factory farming practices that have given beef such a bad reputation. It really challenges the conventional wisdom about beef production. And speaking of challenging conventions, what about urban permaculture? I'm thinking community gardens, rooftop farms, any way to bring food production into the city.
It's a movement that's gaining a lot of traction, and for good reason. Urban farming has the potential to transform our food systems, especially in densely populated areas. Think about it: reduced food miles, empowered communities, and increased access to fresh, locally grown produce.
I read that Detroit has seen a massive surge in urban farms and gardens. Over 1,400, it's become a real source of community pride and resilience.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the food itself. It's about reconnecting people to the source of their food, fostering a sense of community ownership and stewardship.
And let's not forget the health benefits of fresh, locally grown produce. So we've covered a lot of ground here. The challenges of industrial farming, the promise of new technologies, and the potential for reimagining traditional practices.
It's clear that there's no single solution, no magic bullet. We need a diverse and adaptable approach that combines the best of all worlds: technological innovation, sustainable practices, and community-based solutions.
What really stands out to me is the interconnectedness of all these issues. It's not just about producing more food, it's about creating a food system that's good for people, good for the planet, and good for the economy.
I think that's a key takeaway. We need to move beyond the siloed thinking that has often dominated discussions about food and agriculture. We need to think holistically, recognizing the complex web of relationships between food production, environmental health, social justice, and economic viability.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the key questions we should be asking ourselves?
One question that comes to mind is, how do we scale up these innovative solutions? Many of the technologies and practices we've discussed are still relatively niche. How do we make them more accessible and affordable for farmers and communities around the world?
That's a big one. And how do we ensure that these innovations benefit everyone, not just a privileged few? How do we create a food system that's truly equitable and just?
Those are crucial questions. We need to be mindful of the potential for new technologies to exacerbate existing inequalities, and we need to prioritize solutions that empower marginalized communities and promote food sovereignty.
Another question that resonates with me is, how do we shift consumer behavior? We've talked about the power of individual choices, but how do we encourage more people to support sustainable food systems?
I think education is key. We need to raise awareness about the environmental and social impacts of our food choices and highlight the benefits of supporting sustainable and ethical food producers. And we need to make those choices easier, making sustainable options more readily available and affordable.
So it's not just about technological innovation, it's about changing our mindset and our habits. What are some of the things that you listening in are already doing or could imagine doing to support a more sustainable food future?
There are so many ways to get involved. Maybe you're already supporting local farmers markets or growing your own food. Maybe you're reducing your meat consumption or choosing more plant-based options. Or perhaps you're advocating for policy changes that support sustainable agriculture.
Every little bit counts. Even just being more mindful of the food we buy and the companies we support can make a difference.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our food choices have power. They can either contribute to the problems we've been discussing or be part of the solution.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about, and I hope it's done the same for you. As we move forward, it's clear that we need to keep asking these tough questions and keep pushing for a food system that's truly sustainable, equitable, and just.
I completely agree. And we need to remember that this isn't just about the future of food. It's about the future of our planet and our collective well-being.
It's been an eye-opening exploration for sure.
It really highlights the fact that we're all interconnected. Even if you live in a city, the choices you make about food have ripple effects across the globe.
And speaking of choices, I'm curious, what resonates most with you from all of this? What stuck with you?
For me, it's the reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. We need both high-tech innovation and a return to more traditional, sustainable practices.
I agree. It's about finding the right balance. Maybe vertical farms can help us feed densely populated urban areas, while regenerative grazing practices can revitalize rural landscapes.
Exactly. And let's not forget the power of community-based initiatives, urban gardens, farmers markets, community-supported agriculture. These are all ways to connect people more directly to their food sources.
And those connections, I think, are key to building a more resilient and equitable food system. When you know where your food comes from and the people who produce it, you're more likely to care about how it's grown.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It fosters a sense of responsibility and stewardship.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the future of farming, I'm left with a sense of both urgency and optimism. The challenges are real, but so are the solutions. And the more we learn, the better equipped we are to make informed choices.
I couldn't agree more. It's an ongoing conversation and one that we all need to be a part of.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a fascinating journey. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep making those conscious choices. Until next time, happy eating. So, speaking of choices, I'm curious, what resonates most with you from all of this? What stuck with you?
For me, it's the reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. We need both the high-tech innovation and a return to more traditional, sustainable practices.
Yeah, I agree. It's about finding that right balance. Maybe vertical farms can help us feed those densely populated urban areas, while those regenerative grazing practices revitalize rural landscapes.
Exactly. And let's not forget the power of those community-based initiatives. Urban gardens, farmers markets, community-supported agriculture, all ways to connect people more directly to their food sources.
And those connections, I think, are really key to building a more resilient and equitable food system. When you know where your food comes from and the people who produce it, you're much more likely to care about how it's grown.
Absolutely. It fosters a sense of responsibility and stewardship.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the future of farming, I'm left with a sense of both urgency and optimism. The challenges are real, but so are the solutions. And the more we learn, the better equipped we are to make informed choices.
I couldn't agree more. It's an ongoing conversation and one that we all need to be a part of.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a fascinating journey. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep making those conscious choices. Until next time, happy eating.